Welcome back. In my latest book, I briefly discuss an act of Congress that got lazily tossed into an appropriations bill that included $95.3 billion for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Known as the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act, it was solely constructed as a means to ban the Chinese social media app known as TikTok, because it ostensibly was gathering information on Americans for the Chinese Communist Party. But the government doesn't really care about any of that. Some say that the app allowed too much pro-Palestine and anti-Israel free speech, but this is all just manipulated, just like this bill. Of course, they just couldn't single out that particular app, so they excluded any social media apps from operating in the United States if they were owned by a so-called foreign adversary. The offensive app, singular, as only TikTok was singled out, was given a time period of 270 days, roughly 9 months, after the bill became law to sell their company to an approved buyer. The owners were allowed one extension of 90 days, a single stay of execution, that bumped the total amount of time allotted to 360 days, but only if they had a plan in place to sell. Essentially, the U.S. government was acting just like the mob and figuratively holding a gun to the owner's head stating, "Join or die." The godfather of the moment of this corrosive criminal cartel, the cognitively compromised Joe Biden, dutifully signed the bill for his handlers and created Public Law 118-50 on 24 April 2024. So why was this action taken? I mean, U.S. companies and the U.S. intelligence agencies spy on Americans all the time. Oh, it's because they are domestic spies, and domestic spies would never use that information against their own people, right? Well, except selling their data to the highest bidder, that is. So this is why they had to include the key words of foreign adversary, so that it excluded them. And they couldn't just say foreign government, because that would include the biggest spy, data collector, and world's most dangerous and unofficial adversary, Israel. Hence, China had to be elevated into the role of boogeyman in this particular case. Never mind that Anthony Fauci worked with the Chinese on gain-of-function research through non-governmental intermediary EcoHealth Alliance, ultimately leading to millions of deaths, if you believe their own fanciful narrative. Never mind that a Chinese company, BGI Group, a company linked to the Chinese military and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, was trying to collect the DNA of Americans during COVID. Never mind that the U.S. government was warned by an expert panel that adversary countries might use this data to target genetic weaknesses in the U.S. population, and even augment said adversaries' own military personnel. Never mind the fact that a top U.S. general, Mark Milley, when he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, committed treason by secretly contacting China over dubious fears that Trump might spark a war during his first administration. But we're supposed to believe that the con artist in the bought and paid for by Israel U.S. Congress suddenly became worried about the data of U.S. citizens. Seriously. It's all a lie, my fellow souls. It's all BS. Take a look at all of the incredible ironies displayed here. First, we have a repressive communist nation providing a social media app to Americans with more freedom and free speech than any social media company owned by so-called Americans. Then we have the act, buried within the appropriations bill, that seeks to fund so-called democracies around the world, while at the same time denying freedom of speech to Americans by banning something they love and choose to use. And finally, and most egregiously, we have a bill passed by the House, H.R. 815, that originally was designed to amend Title 38 of the United States Code in order to help veterans receive reimbursement for emergency care, something called the Relieve Act, that was effectively hijacked by the Senate and used as a vehicle to create the appropriations bill that included the TikTok ban. This was likely done to skirt the requirements of Article 1, Section 7, Clause 1 of the Constitution, which states that all bills for raising revenue must originate within the House of Representatives. Even though this bill does not involve raising revenue, it does involve money, and since I don't believe the Supreme Court has ruled on this, they are likely using their typical way to cheat the game, just in case. And no, sadly, it doesn't appear that the veterans received their needed help, at least not in that bill. It's only important that foreign governments who can take care of themselves be showered with money, while the U.S. citizens be stripped of rights and be forced to support murderous, genocidal regimes against their will. The shady way our government acts is actually quite disgusting. Not only did they take from all Americans, they particularly screwed veterans, one of their favorite punching bags. What was it that Henry Kissinger said? Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy? Where's the truth in the TikTok takeaway? Well, as always, it is found in the symbolism. There's always a story above and a story below. If lies are on the surface, then the truth must lay in the shadows within the symbolism. This is how the elite reveal the truth to us. It's how they communicate, just like the gods. For example, the term adversary can also refer to the adversary, Satan or Lucifer. You might laugh, but this is actually a quite compelling line of thought. After all, the House of Reprehensibles passed the act on 13 March 2024. Yep, another 3 and 13, as we witnessed in earlier videos. While the senile Senate passed the bill on 23 April 2024, 41 days later. The number 41 is the 13th prime. Most importantly was the fact that 13 March was 33 days prior to Donald Trump's New York trial in the Stormy Daniels hush money case, which we will discuss in the next video. We've seen the number 33 a great deal in the previous videos, and what it tends to reveal is that this particular event is critically linked to Trump in some way. The reference to Satan is quite revealing because, as I stated, the great Satan, the United States government, is essentially saying, join or die. This links back to the American Revolution and the cartoon, Join or Die. In this case, bow down and worship me or be crucified. This is basically the same offer Satan gave Christ. Now we have the roles being reversed and the Christian nation playing Satan. Do you doubt this? The time period of 270 days is 3 days shy of 9 full months, or 39 weeks. There's that number 3 again. Of course, as we learned in earlier videos, 39 weeks is the normal gestation period of a human fetus, and is itself a trinity of 13s. The symbolism seems to suggest that TikTok has 9 months to become born again in Christ, or in the nation created in the image of Christ. Conveniently, those 270 days were up on 19 January 2025, the very day before Trump's second inauguration. Think about this. TikTok had to become born again before Donald Trump, the person I have already shown is playing the role of Christ, comes to power. Remember, though, roles have reversed. There's a message here that the elite are telegraphing from the Bible regarding time itself. And lest you doubt the biblical link, when you include the 270 days and one 90-day extension, this brings the total time period to 360 days, or 1 biblical year. Yes, a year in the Bible is only 360 days. This refers to one complete cycle or one complete period of time. This is very important to grasp. The concept of time is being placed before us for some reason, and it's being linked to Trump/Christ. So what happened? Well, Trump came to power, yet TikTok refused to be born again. Christ, in the guise of Trump, gave them an extension, even though they had not committed to the Christian nation, albeit only 75 days to start. Confused? Remember, like the Bible, these events are metaphor and allegory and parables. We need to figure out the meaning. A message is being given. I have a good idea of where it's going. Would you like to know a little more? As mentioned in my latest book, The Great Deception, What If We Are All Satanists? It was no accident that the day chosen for TikTok's born-again moment was the day before Trump came to power the second time. Indeed, this day was 0119, a mirror echo of 9/11. The events of 9/11 depicted the death of the age of Pisces, and the chief god of that astrological age was Christ. The Twin Towers symbolically represented the twin ones of 1 BC and 1 AD, with Christ himself being born right in between at ground zero. The events of 9/11 represented the end of an epoch, the end of a cell of time that, in this case, was marked by the switch from Pisces to Aquarius. More specifically, those events represented the end of Christianity. Now, I could spend another 5 minutes telling you about how each astrological age has a primary god that is always destroyed at the end of that age. It's in my book if you are interested. But what does this have to do with the TikTok ban, you ask? TikTok is symbolizing tick-tock, the sound of a clock. The message being given is not just talking about banning a particular app. It refers to the banning of time, the official end of the age of Pisces that is decreed by law. When the tick-tock clock finally runs out, the age of Aquarius symbolically begins in earnest, and Christianity dies. Wait a minute, you exclaim. I just said 9/11 was the end of the age of Pisces. That was 23 years ago. Yes, indeed. I will eventually give you the answer in these videos, but for now, let's just say that it takes a little while for the flywheel of time to stop spinning after power has been disconnected. This moment of death, if you will, is not immediate, but takes decades. And while it's coming to a stop, let's just say that another narrative has been playing in the background over these intervening decades. So an astrological age ends. Big deal. Life goes on, you claim. Does it? You see, it is my belief that we exist within bubbles of time with a set lifespan, which I believe is around 6,000 years. I call them cells. Within each cell, time only has enough time to go so far. Think of time as the air supply in a diver's tank. Eventually, it runs out. Eventually, your time runs out. Yes, it sounds crazy, but did you know that L. Frank Baum, creator of The Wizard of Oz, introduced a character called TikTok in the third book of his Oz series, entitled Ozma of Oz? We just can't get away from that number 3, can we? This was way back in 1907, which will become an important time frame in a future video. TikTok was one of the first robots in literature, existing even before they were known as robots. It was a round mechanical man that ran on clockwork springs which periodically needed to be wound, just like a mechanical clock. Does this not adeptly describe my theoretical proposition of cells of time being 6,000 years in length which eventually run down and need to be rewound? It's a children's book, you argue. It's fiction. Again, is it? We all pick up on things around us all the time. It's like our brains are tuning in to different radio stations, and little pieces of the grand puzzle are provided. As stated, in my recent 3 books, we are actively reliving events that took place in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. We can argue about this for as long as we have left. It doesn't matter. All I can do is put the pieces together for what I see and pass it on. You take what you want and add to your own theories, and then form your own beliefs. I simply have a different perspective. Right now it is my belief that the world is being prepped for the next astrological god. We are being given a preview, like Moses being shown the promised land he would never enter. Who is this new god, you ask? Well, what is Aquarius, the water bearer? What's the biggest water bearer in the solar system? Earth. This is why the climate change narrative exists, and saving the planet, and being green, and why Trump is trying to buy Greenland. It's why LA is being burned to the ground, the city of angels. A new god for this coming age is being born, a god that elevates the planet above humans. And the old god must die. The United States, the Christian nation, is being crucified. What can we expect? Well, the Mayans celebrated the end of an age every 52 years with their calendar round ceremony. During that time, all fires would be extinguished and relit the next morning, essentially the same motif as dying and being resurrected on the 3rd day, or having the lights dim in a theater before the coming movie. These are common fertility rituals practiced by the elite. This is what we see happening to TikTok. Stay vigilant. I believe that whatever happens to TikTok will determine what happens to us. But before I leave, I want to bring up one additional point to ponder that I rediscovered during my research. You see, one of my favorite shows growing up was Irwin Allen's The Time Tunnel. It only lasted 1 season in 1966 to 67, but it deeply inspired me all my life. Recently I started watching the episodes again and noticed something I had always missed. The time travel program was called Project TikTok, without the trailing Ks that traditionally have been used to express the sound of a ticking clock. It's quite interesting that I would be drawn to rewatching something I probably haven't seen since the 1970s, while in the midst of preparing this video. The universe was directing me to rediscover something, saying, "Look over here." For some reason, the pilot episode involved the sinking of Titanic, or the ship purporting to be the Titanic. This is interesting because, as I mention in my books, the story of Titanic is the story of Christ's crucifixion. If you want me to create a video about this, let me know in the comments. Tick-tock spinning clock, counting down to sea. Knock, knock, reaper stalks. What fate shall it decree? As always, I hope this video has introduced you to even more interesting alternative concepts. Naturally, the key takeaway to remember is that the elite always speak to us via symbolism. They speak truth via actions that they themselves manufacture, while simultaneously spewing a cacophony of lies to our face. If an event makes no logical sense, it's because it has been infused with elements designed to tell a particular tale. It will never make sense until you step back and try to understand the symbolism you are being given. Sadly, in order to make a proper analysis, you must be versed in the Bible and history, and you must begin to see things from a different perspective. Take a few more steps up the mountain. Your perspective is changing. If you found this topic interesting, please check out my other videos and my books. My website is www.mastersofthemirror.com. Thanks.